How would you describe Michigan's 28-18 win over Arkansas State? I think that Michigan's performance on Saturday was dominant and disappointing, all at the same time. It was another weekend where Michigan was consistently inconsistent. I want you to give your reply in the comments section. What do you, and I mean you, personally, think about Michigan's win over Arkansas State? Arkansas State is the worst opponent that Michigan is going to play all season long. They don't face Mississippi State or UCLA or the Florida Gators or any trash Power 4 team, in truth. Arkansas State is far and away the worst opponent Michigan will play all season long, but it's another game, and there were a lot of themes that were consistent with Michigan's theme and style of play against Fresno State in Texas, so there are things to take away from that performance. And I want you to tell me what you thought about Michigan's performance on Saturday and what you think their season outlook is down in the comments section. Welcome back to College Football with Sam, and I also want to say, before I dive into this game and give my personal reaction and analysis, and also give you the good, the bad, and the ugly of where I think Michigan's roster and team stand, because I think Saturday pointed all of that out, exposed Michigan's weaknesses and strengths potentially even more than the Texas game did. Before we get into all of that, I want you to like the video, to subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell, share the video around, and again, comment your reaction and analysis down below, because you probably saw something or picked up on something that I didn't. And whether that something is significant or insignificant, really, I don't care. It's just more to talk about. It helps my brain process everything and get a better feel for not just how you feel as a fan of Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State, any Big Ten team or any college football team, but also makes me think about, well, the team I'm covering. I love reading the comment sections of all my videos about all the different reactions and analyses and previews and predictions, because it gives me a feel of, again, not just what you think, but it also challenges my thought process. So please comment, but also like the video to help us get into the algorithm, and subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so that you can get notified when we release new content, and help us to reach 20,000 subscribers, which I'm hoping to do, quite frankly, by the end of September. And we'll be doing a massive giveaway whenever we reach 20,000 subscribers. In our first video to get to 1,000 likes, I will also be doing a giveaway for that. So 2 giveaways await you if you subscribe to the channel. But let's get back to it. What did Michigan do to Arkansas State? I don't really know how to answer that question in just a simple adjective or word. Like, I can't just say Michigan dominated Arkansas State, because while they did on the ground and they looked like the far superior team, they only won by 10 points, and their biggest lead of the day was only 25. Like, they never were blowing out Arkansas State, and they had several opportunities to do so, but kept tripping over themselves. I also can't say that Michigan escaped Arkansas State, because they didn't. Michigan was never in danger of losing that game. Arkansas State's strength is their offense. It's not their defense. Their defense is horrific, but Jalen Raynor and Timmy McClain are objectively athletic quarterbacks, and Timmy McClain is a quarterback who's put on some good tape at UCF. And Michigan did a pretty good job, a better job against Arkansas State's offense than they did against Arkansas State's defense, as Davis Warren threw 3 interceptions. And Michigan at times, while still running the ball very well, over 300 yards, nearly 7 yards per carry. Donovan Edwards did miss some gaping holes the O-line gave him, but he also took some of them and averaged around 5 yards per carry. Khalil Mullings looked like, whether you want to say Blake Corum or Hassan Haskins, he just looked like a Michigan running back. He looks like the running back that Michigan has had consistently as their RB number 1 over many of the Harbaugh years, particularly since 2021. It was just really, it was a mix of, again, disappointment and also dominance, of underwhelming your opponent, but also overwhelming your opponent. And overall, that's why Michigan is being dropped by many people after this game, and by ESPN's FPI, where Michigan fell outside of the top 20, because you can't be consistently inconsistent. That's not how you win college football games. That's not a sign of a good team. Colston Loveland got his shoulder a little dinged up. We'll see if that's anything long-term, or if they were just taking him out because they know that they have games against, well, USC and Michigan State and Washington and Illinois and Oregon and Indiana and Ohio State. And there's one team that I'm missing that is also better than Arkansas State, because Arkansas State sucks. They're not good, which is what makes the 28-18 score disappointing. And Michigan, if Michigan was more efficient, and efficiency is a big part of winning close games and of being a good team, if Michigan was more efficient, this easily would have been like a 56-3 game. Michigan doesn't turn over the football. They don't put Arkansas State in a position to either be aggressive and try and get a touchdown or settle for a few field goals. And Arkansas State missed 2 of their 3 field goals. If Michigan, if they run the ball more, maybe if they're not more efficient in the passing game, but they just decide to run the football more and pass it for even fewer than 18 attempts, they probably win it by 1 or 2 more touchdowns, perhaps controlling the clock more. And yeah, but passing it for only 18 times, 13 of 18 for 134 yards, 7.4 yards per attempt, and a touchdown, that might work against some better teams if Michigan's defense comes to play. But the 3 interceptions, you can't have that stat line and beat any team worth their weight in gold. And there are several teams worth their weight in gold. One of them whose color is golden, coming in next week in USC. So what I want to do is really get the ugly out of the way. We save the best for last on this channel, unless the best really owns the performance and steals the show completely, like what Georgia did to Clemson, for example. But that's not what happened here. So I want to talk about the ugly first and foremost, and that is quarterback play and also coaching. That was the ugly of this performance. Davis Warren, as Michigan's quarterback, starting quarterback, the guy who the staff put all their chips in the middle of the table for. On the season, he has 444 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 6.2 yards per pass attempt, and he's completing 66.7% of his throws. And he's been sacked 4 times. Some say that the reason he's playing poorly is because of the pressure. Well, I got to tell you, through watching 3 games of Michigan football intensely, yes, this offensive line is not as good as the previous 3, although it may be better than last year's in run blocking. Last year's unit was disappointing, to say the least, in the regular season in run blocking, given all that they returned. And they didn't run for 300 yards until the national title game against Washington. And Washington did not have an elite run defense. But anyway, Warren at this point is playing at a level equivalent to Deacon Hill, Spencer Petras, Cade McNamara last year before he got injured, or Cade McNamara in the second half against Iowa State. Michigan, honestly, this is also by me following Iowa for the first 3 games, and I'll be following them for the rest of the year, but in looking at Michigan and Iowa, they are, in a sense, the exact same team this year. That's of course an exaggeration, but both teams are awesome at running the football, and their quarterback play, and I would say indecisiveness with coaching, is ultimately what's holding them back. And unlike last year, it doesn't seem that they have the lockdown secondary to allow little to no explosive plays, or if they do, make up for it with interceptions or defensive touchdowns. Davis Warren throwing, again, 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He threw it for 3 interceptions on Saturday against Arkansas State. 11 of 14 for 122 yards, completed nearly 80% of his passes. And those 11 completions were good, zipping the football, delivering accurate passes, fitting in tight windows. But the 3 interceptions, I would say 2 of them were egregious, and potentially 3 of them were egregious. He still looks a little, starstruck, shell-shocked, whatever you want to call it. And his completions, many of them were to wide-open wide receivers. Just got to be real there. And while he probably is more, accurate than Alex Orji, he's turned over the football 6 times through 3 games. And Michigan, if they want to win, cannot afford an average of 2 turnovers per game, not even counting the potential fumbles that Michigan could randomly give up throughout the year, specifically against good teams with good, disciplined defenses. And Michigan plays a lot of those teams. They avoid Penn State and they avoid Iowa, but Ohio State has an elite defense. Michigan State's defense, as I said from week 1, is good. I think you're seeing the evidence of that slowly. And USC's defense is better than it's ever been under Lincoln Riley, and probably better than it's ever been under Clay Helton as well. It's one of USC's best defenses in recent memory, which isn't saying much, but again, it can take advantage of a Michigan offense that has been consistently inconsistent because of its quarterback play. Warren cannot start at quarterback if Michigan wants to win. He can't. I don't care, and no one who's objective will care if Warren is more precise or accurate, whatever you want to call it. You know that chart? I don't know if any of you will know what I'm talking about, but it's in, they use it in science class to talk about scientific experiments where they have 4 dartboards, and there's accurate and precise, where you're hitting the target, and then all the other dartboards are examples of you not doing an experiment properly, of you not, as a scientist, doing your job properly. And there's precise but not accurate, where you're throwing the darts to one specific zone but you're not hitting the bullseye. There's, accurate but not precise, where you, I think, maybe hit the bullseye a few times but you also miss. Again, I don't know if I'm, saying this exactly correctly. And there's not accurate, not precise, where the darts are just everywhere. What Davis Warren is he appears to be accurate. He deceives you into thinking that he's accurate, but he's not. He just is good at throwing the ball to people, not just to his receivers, but also to his opposing defensive backs, as evidenced by the game against Texas, by the Fresno State game, and more so by the Arkansas State game. He cannot be Michigan's starting QB. Alex Orji, with pressure in his face on the play-action pass for 1st and goal, that's all that Michigan needs. If the offensive line performs well, if the running backs and Donovan Edwards and Kalel Mullings perform well, and if the receivers, again against a bad defense, but if they show consistently throughout the year and they improve upon what they did against Arkansas State, where I thought that they were more disciplined, had better hands, again, against a worse defense than what Fresno State and Texas have. But still, you combine all those things, and Michigan continues to improve, Alex Orji will better suit this team than Davis Warren. This team's built for Alex Orji. And there are some players who perform better in practice, but suck in game, and some players who suck in practice but look good in game. I think the latter is Alex Orji. I don't know if he is even capable of being a good or great QB, but from what he showed against Arkansas State, from what he showed against Fresno State, he can run the ball. And the staff put him in horrific conditions to run the football against Texas. They did not use him properly at all. So I think Orji deserves an apology from the coaching staff. Warren should be benched. And as for coaching, again, what was done to this quarterback room is malpractice. It is ineptitude. It's incompetent. And hopefully the staff learns its lesson and moves on. I liked what I saw from the coaching in the sense that they just wanted to run the ball, improve the offensive line. You saw that that was intentional. And again, it's Arkansas State. I'm not going to say that Michigan has anything better than a good, maybe great offensive line. Still a lot of work to do. But it was objectively better than what we saw against Fresno State. And Michigan's performance on the line of scrimmage against Texas, Texas beat Michigan on the lines of scrimmage because Texas was just doing whatever they wanted on the outside. And eventually you were going to wear down Michigan on the lines of scrimmage. So I think that quarterback, there has to be a change there. As for coaching, they have to just take the medicine, accept that these first 3 games have been awful, and finally adapt and not be obtuse. The bad in this game, defensive back and punter. Bad for Michigan is really just disappointing to expectations because I don't think Michigan's secondary is bad, but it's worse than last year's secondary. And part of it is due to schematics and the fact that Wink Martindale right now kind of reminds me, if I'm being honest, of Manny Diaz. There's a lot of guys, especially on third down, they're always stacked in tight like a bunch of fish in a can of sardines at the line of scrimmage as if they're trying to get pressure like in the interior and just full sending it or convincing the opposing quarterback that they're full sending it. And then they'll drop back into coverage. And then what'll happen on those third and medium, third and long, just third downs is that whether it's Jair Hill, whether it's Zeke Berry, whether it's Makari Page, occasionally Will Johnson, but he typically makes up for it. So I'm not going to give him too much criticism there. Although against Fresno State and also Arkansas State, didn't look as good as you would expect an elite corner like him to look. But anyway, the opponent will convert. They'll find a hole in the zone. Their wide receiver or tight end will beat their defender in man. Overall, it looks like Michigan has deviated perhaps a little bit too much from their previous scheme. And maybe I'm not reading that properly, but there's either that going on and or Michigan is just not well coached on defense in many of the position groups. The defensive line, some talked about how they didn't get enough pressure in TFLs. Michigan's defense in 21, 22, and 23 was never known for being a sack or tackle for loss monster. They would just basically stalwart you at the line of scrimmage, which is good. Often, defenses that are like sack monsters, look at Oklahoma State under Jim Knowles in 2021 or Penn State under Manny Diaz, they will give up explosive plays, and they can very well be worked due to their aggression by offenses that are disciplined and strong at the line of scrimmage. But the defensive backs for the Wolverines allowed Arkansas State to pass for over 200 yards and 1 touchdown. And that first drive with the first string defense and then the final 2 drives where Arkansas State scored touchdowns, 9 plays, 64 yards, about 4 minutes, 11 plays, 75 yards, again, about 4 minutes, was mostly on the defensive back room. I mean, Michigan only allowed Arkansas State to run for 2.3 yards per carry, and that was in garbage time. Before that, it was under 1 yard per carry. But Michigan is going to... They're not going to have much of a drop-off from their first-string defensive line to second-string defensive line. I think Lou Esposito is a really good coach. Objectively, he is, based off of how he developed Braden Fisk and Andre Carter at Western Michigan. And Michigan's very talented on the defensive line and more experienced on the defensive line than they are at DB or linebacker. And combining that with, I think, inferior coaches at linebacker and DB, and the fact that Michigan, well, they run a 4-2-5, so they have more DBs out there than defensive linemen and way more than linebackers. There's consequentially going to be more holes. Michigan's obvious weakness on defense is their secondary. It's what Texas did. The reason Texas was able to run on Michigan is because Michigan had to change their style of defense to try and better defend against the pass. Because Texas would use a third and Quinn Ewers with Matthew Golden, Silas Bolden, or Isaiah Bond occasionally. as Will Johnson did a pretty good job covering him. And also don't forget about Gunnar Helm to just convert on third down and continue moving the chains and chewing clock. Arkansas State was able to do that against Michigan's second or third string secondary in the fourth quarter. Again, in garbage time, Michigan already had won, but Michigan is going to have to rotate against USC and against Ohio State and against Oregon and Michigan State. They're going to have to play depth pieces. They probably will, because injuries are a thing. And because from what we've seen with Michigan's offense isn't going to have 35 to 40 minutes or even 33, 32 minutes of possession every game, because right now they're too inconsistent at quarterback and in the passing game, and I don't know if they'll make the change they need to make at quarterback. So consequently, the defense, I think, for Michigan will be on the field more than previous Michigan defenses, which means more rotation to keep players healthy and to keep them rested. And Michigan, outside of their first string, and even with their first string in the secondary, does have some issues. This defense is great, near elite. I'll have to see more out of it before I say it's elite. Their run blocking is definitely elite, and this defensive line can certainly get pressure. Wink Martindale, I think, actually did a good job of not blitzing too much. I think it's why Michigan didn't get as much pressure or sacks like they did against Fresno State, but it's also why they didn't give like barely any big plays until the end of the game when it was already over and Michigan was clearly putting in their second and third stringers. And as for punting, it's another game where Tommy Doman is averaging under 40 yards per punt, so that's not good. The good in this performance, and I'll keep it very brief because, well, honestly, there's a lot more bad to talk about with Michigan than good, because they look like they're still overrated based off of the first three games, if we're being honest here. The good is running back, tight end, and offensive line. Michigan ran for over 300 yards on Saturday, 301 yards to be exact, 6.8 yards per carry, and 3 rushing touchdowns. Kalel Mullings led the day with 15 carries for 153 yards, 10.2 yards per carry, and 2 touchdowns with a long of 38. Donovan Edwards had a long of 9, but he still averaged 4.8 yards per carry, had a touchdown, 82 yards, and 72 carries. So he's consistently, and you saw this against Texas, he's now consistently able to get 4-5 yards per pop. And while you'd love him to hit a big play, if Edwards can average that consistently, getting 4, 5, sometimes 6-yard chunks every time he gets the ball, that's going to be very, very useful and will be a sign of a good running back there. And other contributors were Alex Orji, 3 carries for 27 yards. Benjamin Hall had 3 carries for 20 yards. Davis Warren had a nice scramble at one point in the game, but other than that, he took a few sacks, and it's just clear that Orji's more mobile, and this offense is built for Orji. And also, I believe the team thinks that Orji's the better quarterback. I do. I saw it against Fresno State, where they played better, and I think they played the same, if not a little better, when Orji was in the game. I mean, Davis Warren really gave away points to the other team. It wasn't just like he threw a turnover, like one interception in the end zone and it was a mistake. He set up Arkansas State to take points consistently. Now, and they failed to capitalize on them, in part because Michigan's defense held them to field goals, but also because Butch Jones is incompetent. I mean, if he were to throw 3 interceptions against USC, Michigan's not winning unless their defense somehow puts on this epic performance that would only be comparable to last year's defensive performance against Washington. And I don't think this defense is capable of doing that. At least I'll have to see it before I believe it. So the running game is clearly the strength of this team. When you run for 300 yards on anyone, that's good. That's very good. I mean, Ohio State did it against Western Michigan, and the week prior they couldn't do it against Akron, who sucks, and Rutgers casually ran for a bajillion yards in them. So it's not easy to run for 300 yards on anyone, and that's a good sign. Michigan's O-line looked good. Greg Crippen, I think, is clearly the best center, pardon me, so he should be starting. And at tight end, Marlon Klein actually led the team in receiving yards with 43 on 3 receptions. Colston Loveland had 3 receptions for 30 yards, and also Hogan Hansen got involved with a touchdown reception. So I think the tight end room's very deep. They're good at blocking. They're good at catching. Michigan's O-line's improving at blocking, both in pass block, but more importantly in run block. The running back room, just based off of what I've seen through 3 games, if utilized properly, it will be just like the average Michigan running back room of the previous 3 years. Yeah, Blake Corum is gone. He'll be missed. You won't have his upside in the running back room, but if they properly utilize, which is a big if, Kalel Mullings and Donovan Edwards and also Benjamin Hall, Michigan's running back room will still be one of the better running back rooms in the country. Michigan has the talent on offense and defense to still be a good, great, maybe at best, near elite team this season. But the problem is, will they utilize it? Because so far they have not utilized their talent whatsoever, and that's why there are a plethora of teams nationally who are performing better than the Michigan Wolverines. My MVP of this game is running back Kalel Mullings. 15 carries, 153 yards, 10.2 yards per carry, and 2 rushing touchdowns. He was my MVP of this game because he ran hard, broke several tackles, and he showcased really impressive speed for a man his size. So Kalel Mullings is my most valuable player of this game. I think he could easily be Michigan's most valuable player to end the season. With the way that he runs and how Michigan's offensive line has performed, he could go for 100 yards or even more in all of Michigan's remaining games, even with how some of Michigan's opponents play on defense. I think Mullings is that good, both in power situations, and also he showcased some speed that will make him a threat for breakaway explosive plays as well. Thank you all so much for watching this video. Remember to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and comment your thoughts down below. Thanks to Crash2488 and Brasco Rascal for being Heisman members. Thanks to Chris Lane, Kind of Little OH, Ismar, Tyler Nye, and Chilton Cush for being All-American members. And thanks to John Lynn, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Sale, Austin Christmas, and Janisha Cockrell for being all conference members. The link to my Patreon page if you want to support the channel, and if you want to gain access to my weekly picks for college football games, sign up on my Patreon page as an All-American or Heisman member. $10 a month for All-American, $25 a month for Heisman. And the link to my Patreon page and my merchandise store is both in the description and the pinned comment. Have a great day, guys. Go Blue and go Red Wolves.